Recording is starting. Okay, so today we're gonna do a review lecture on all the subjects that we have been going through this week. So if you have missed out on anything, we're going to discuss it. This is also the time to ask any questions that you still have. So please interrupt me if you have any questions during the lecture. And we are going to discuss Node, the first steps and file structure. We're going to talk about Node modules, about file input output, the Node web server, and that's gonna be it for today. So let's start off with Node itself. So everybody by now has Node installed and has been working with it so far. So I think that everybody already has a good understanding of what Node is and how it works. But let's go over the terminal commands that we can use for Node. So when we type in Node itself in our terminal, it will open our command line where we can copy paste our text or test out pieces of code instantly. But the best way to run Node is, of course, by executing the file in itself by saying node followed by the file name argument. And as we have also been busy with the country information app and we have been busy with process.argv, we also have realized that we have the possibility to add more arguments to this by just putting a space behind it. So basically, yeah, don't worry about this. This is just the file recorder at the moment. I'll open Node. When I type in Node and I say the file name, I have also got the possibility to add extra arguments, for instance blah blah or blah 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 blah, and it will be found with process.argv and will be placed in an array. And by now we all know how to work with arrays, so we have the possibility to take out these arguments and work with it in our code. Then of course the last command, node -v, basically tells us the version, and so we know that Node is installed and which version we have installed. So now I'm going to start with some questions for the class. So, who was willing to answer the first question? What can we do with Node?
Setting up a server.
Setting up a server? Yep, that's definitely one thing we can do with Node.
Run JavaScript code.
Yep, perfect.
Or run scripts.
Yep, that's correct. So those are the two functions or the two things that we are mainly going to be using throughout this course. But with Node.js we have way more possibilities. We can even control drones, make web apps, and do way more stuff, even mobile apps. This is all possible with modules, and we have all got a basic understanding of modules by now, and if not, I'm gonna go over the modules some more during this lecture. Then the next question, why do we use Node? Basically already got answered by you. To run JavaScript, basically said, and we can program with it whatever we basically want. So, last question, is Node client side or server side?
So,
Both. That is indeed the answer. Server side is what we are basically using here at the moment. That is totally correct. But we also have the possibility to use it on the client side when we make apps for the computer itself, for instance. But in most situations, you would just use it for the server side. And that's what we're mainly focusing on during this course. So then I'm going to tell something about the first steps and the file structure to actually starting a Node.js project. So the first step is to create a project folder, and to give this structure with all the rest of our projects that we're working for, we will place our project in the node project folder, which is inside of our BSSA work folder, so that we have all got it clearly and sorted well, so we have structure in our files itself. Then the next step, of course, is to do npm init. Who can tell me why we do npm init? Jimmy, have you got an idea why we do npm init?
Not specific, but you do npm init to work to get in the file, right? To work in.
Not completely. Anybody else got a more better answer?
It activates or installs npm for the first time.
Yeah, so it basically initializes npm so that we know that, or that npm knows that this is our project that we are working for, and it creates the project.json file. So then, as the next step, we do git init. Why do we use git init? Donovan, you have an answer? No? Gislana got an answer?
I don't have an answer.
No?
Do we have to do git in it?
Yeah, what do you
Is it so we could possibly put it in our repository?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
But
Yeah.
you don't have to.
You don't have to, but as we are going to work a lot with Git and GitHub together throughout this course, it's definitely mandatory to also initialize the Git project or the Git repository on our computer. And then, as a last step, we create a git ignore file in our main directory that
Sorry,
contains.
I have a question.
Yes.
With the Git, I mean, I use the terminal, but why do we use the terminal over the desktop app with Git?
Because in your future job opportunities, you will also be working a lot with the terminal, and it's
Yeah.
very nice to have the knowledge about the terminal. And certain commands that we use in the terminal with Git cannot be used with the desktop app.
Okay.
Most of the functionality that Git does by itself can be used with the GitHub app, but not everything.
It's just a more visual tool, but the
Yes.
terminal's actually better.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. If you can get used to Git in the terminal, please get used to Git usage in the terminal. But if you really feel like it's impossible for yourself, just download the Git desktop app. That's something very unethical for myself to say, but I also want to make your life easy as well. Then the last step is to create a git ignore file, and we do this by saying .git ignore and saving that as the file name. No name itself in front of it, just .git ignore, and in the file self, just as when we have opened our normal files, it starts empty, and all we have to place in it is /node modules.
Why are you making this file?
Why are you making this file? You're making this file so Git will not or will ignore uploading this file to the repository, because it's not part of your code, it's part of somebody else's code. And so when you have downloaded a lot of code of other people's, this can get bigger and bigger while this is already online available. So that's what npm init also does, or npm itself. It manages the packages, and so when somebody else wants to use your code, you just have to press npm install, and all your modules that were not installed will automatically be installed in that case. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's because of the package file.
Yes, exactly.
Because it writes a list of like with Express, and then when we use other packages, and then when somebody press npm install, it just downloads the packages. It looks at
Yes.
the package file and then it just downloads it.
Exactly. So when we type in npm install, when we download a package from somebody else, it will just open the package.json file and read through the full file, and see, oh, I need these dependencies, I need these modules, and just install all of it automatically for you. So, what to place in the project folder itself? Well, we start off with the app.js file, which is the main Node executable file, so where we start Node from. Then we create a second folder, a public folder for the static content, like images and CSS, like I have shown before. And then we also will be creating in the future a folder called views, where we will working with dynamic dynamic pages. But this is something for next week, but just to remember that in the future you will also be creating an extra folder named views. And if you're working with JSON files, it was also very nice to make a folder called JSON, so that all the JSON files end up in the JSON folder. So the end result, what does this eventually end up? How does it all look like at the end? So when we go inside our BSSA work folder, and then inside of that folder we have our first week with our basics JavaScript, our HTML folder, and now also our Node projects folder. And then of course in the Node projects we make a folder for each project that we work with, and so when we are in that folder we have the following files inside of it. We have the app.js for our file, for our node running. We have the package.json that knows all the dependencies that it has. A .git file for the initialized Git repository. A git ignore file for actually making sure that the node modules folder does not get sent as well. When we install node modules, it will also create a folder called node modules. We will have a folder views, and we will have a folder called public. So normally you don't see the files with a dot in front of it because this makes files hidden. So whenever you place a dot in front of any file, it will automatically be hidden from your normal file system. So you will not be able to normally see it. But with the commando ls-a, you will tell the computer basically to list all the files, including the hidden files. Are there questions about that?
Yeah, what goes in the views folder?
What goes in the views folder? There will be going template files that we will be creating next week.
Okay.
So that's something we'll go into deeper next week. Okay, and then we come to the point of node modules itself. So I'm going to start off with a question. What are modules? Sophia, you want to answer it? What are modules?
Is it like a library with scripts?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a library with scripts.
Mm.
So you basically have scripts that are written by somebody else that you can make use of in your own app. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel basically. So you can make use of scripts that are written by others. And that's what we use modules for. So when we want to install modules, we can do that in two ways. We can either do it globally or we can do it locally. And when we are doing this locally, we would do npm install -- save and then the module name. Who can tell me why we type in -- save in the command?
It's only going to save that one folder.
It will do what?
Only saves the folder that you specify to install into.
Not exactly correct, or I'm not completely understanding how you're trying to say it, but what it basically does is it saves it in the JSON dot or the package.json file. So whenever somebody else will be installing your app without the node modules folder, that it will know what dependencies it actually needs. So when somebody else will be using your app in the future, they will automatically have the list of all the dependencies that we have installed.
And that's known as the globally.
No, that's meant locally.
Right.
So globally, we only use when we are working with an app that we want to install on the computer itself. So basically, when we had to have modules, can also be scripts that can be run by itself. So for instance, we installed NodeMon, or we can install way more other scripts or pieces of code that we can run from the computer itself. And that's when we install them globally.
Do mobile apps use Node as well?
Yes,
So you know when you download from the Play Store, you're downloading the app.
yes.
Is that when you're downloading like the package as well, or is it just when you download the app, does it already come with everything that it needs to run?
When you download an app, it's already compiled or
It's already
converted.
compiled.
Yes. So it starts off as a Node app, and then the module that turns it into an app will actually turn it into an app for you and give you just a file that is ready to run.
Okay.
So is it now clear what the difference is between local and global? Yeah. Okay, and then of course we also want to have the possibility to actually use the modules. So we have two kinds of modules. Either we make the modules ourselves, or we can download them from NPM. And when we download them from NPM, we can simply say const module is equals to require and then the module name straight away. And it will instantly start looking for the module in the node modules folder. But sometimes we're making our own modules, and when we are working with our own modules, we have to specify where it can be found. So we will tell it the location of the module in the correct folder and give it the JavaScript file, which is the module. So, are there any more questions about modules itself, or things that are unclear? No? Okay. Well, then we're already coming to the point of file input output. So how has the file input output been going for everybody this week? I want to see thumbs. Going very well, going very bad, going a bit in the middle. Yeah. Uh-oh. Okay. So good to have an idea of where everybody is standing at the moment. So when we want to read something, we can basically import the file module. So we do that by saying variable fs is require fs. Because this already comes with Node itself, we don't have to install it manually in this case, but we can instantly require it. And just as with any module, a module contains a lot of functions. And one of the functions that it has is read file. So at the beginning we specify fs that we want to have the function that's inside of the module, and which function we want is after the point. In this case that's read file. And then inside of it we can give it arguments. In this case we give it 2 arguments. We give it as first argument, we give it our file, and as a second argument we give it our callback function. So in this case, we're placing the function straight into it, but we could also place this externally in a global function. So in this case, in the first case, it goes through if there's an error, then throw the error, and if not, it's just going to keep on going. And where we specify text is the data to string. Because normally the data that we receive is just placed into the buffer and is basically just simple file, or how would I say it simply? It's just basically ones and zeros and just not read in the way that we can actually work with it. So if it's just a string, we can do toString, but often we are reading JSON files, and when we are trying to read JSON files, we also want to be converting it to an actual object that we can make use of, or an array that we want to make use of. And so we do that by parsing the JSON. So in this example, we are receiving the data, and we can work with the data. In this case, the data is the JSON, or is the JavaScript array, and we can place that as an argument for JSON.parse. So when we parse the data, we are specifying to that the parsed JSON information is going to be in the object. So whenever we are going to call the object in the future, we can actually receive that information. So just as that we did with the read file, we also have the possibility to write files. So in this case, we have a variable called file contents, which is equals to hi. So hi is what we eventually want to go and save. And then as a first argument, we can give the file name as what we want to save it. The second argument is the actual content that we want to save it to. And then the third is the function that will be able to throw an error if there is an error. So, just as with reading the JSON, we also need to stringify the JSON so it actually gets saved correctly. We can do that by basically using the stringify function of the JSON module. So in this case, we have an object with some content in an object, and we place that in as an argument for JSON.stringify, and that's going to be my JSON. So now we can parse or pass on my JSON as file content. So who has been having some issues with the file input output and wants to tell something about it? Or some questions that popped up? Come on, I saw quite some fingers like this and like this, so there must be somebody with a story or something to tell about it. Oh wow. What?
It was tough.
It was tough? What made it so tough for you?
Just, I don't know, it's just quite complex, you know,
Mm-hmm.
different layers.
Yeah.
Going through the read function, for instance.
Yeah.
It's just, when it's new, it's quite hard to understand.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. So yeah, basically, just as from the beginning with JavaScript, it's all about following the chain of commands that's actually happening. So where does your code start and where does it end?
Yeah.
So it's always really important to keep that in mind.
We haven't done any of this though, have we? Stringify.
We have not saved any files yet, or any JSON files yet, but if you want to give it a try, definitely go for it and make use of the stringify.
How would that come out now, the object, if it's in string flag. Which
How-
is such a stupid word, actually, string flag.
Yeah. How it would come out? It would basically come out as a string instead of as an object.
Okay.
So you will have the possibility to just read it as a string, but you will not be able to use it as an object anymore.
Sure.
So, last subject, Node web servers. Who has already given it a try? Hands for people who gave it a try? Okay. Okay, still quite some people to give it a go then. So then it's definitely good if I give it another shot at explaining it. So, we've been using modules, and to start a web server, we will also be using the Express module. And in this case, just as other modules, we save it by saying npm install -- save express. I will be sending these slides all to you, so you will also have the possibility to see the Hello World example from the Express website itself, because it's also very nice to have an understanding of how documentations work and see if they can clarify some things for you and play around with what they are telling you on the website. So I already explained that we had 4 types of requests. We have GET requests, we have POST requests, PUT requests, and DELETE requests. So, who can tell me what we use GET requests for? Erin, you want to give it a try?
Like content.
Yeah, yeah. We want to get the content. What kind of content would we be able to get?
HTML or JS content.
Yeah, basically whatever content we are wanting to receive. Yep. And then a post request. What do we use a post request for?
Sending data.
Yeah.
So it could be like a comment on Instagram.
Mhm. Correct.
When you post it in that field,
Yeah.
it gets sent to the server, the Instagram server, and then they save it there.
Correct. And then, so then we still have the put request. What do we use the put request for?
It's the only one I don't know.
That's the only one you don't know?
Yeah.
Okay. Luciana, do you know what we use a put request for?
To update data.
To update data. Correct. Okay. And then delete request, I'm not even going to go over that. That's too simple. That's self-explanatory, I guess.
Why is it called put?
Why is it called put?
We added more of it, I don't know.
Yeah.
You obviously don't know, but
No, that would be difficult to answer for me.
it'd be nice if it was called update.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should have just done that.
Yeah, maybe they should have done
Maybe
that.
like,
I don't know who's come up with these names, seriously.
No.
We do need to know.
No, maybe
No, I know, it's
maybe
just-
we should start emailing and spamming the inventor for it.
Yeah.
And like start a whole group of haters against the put
There
request.
must be a way that maybe it stands for something like something update and then
Yeah.
so it's like an acronym, PET.
Yeah. Maybe. I was thinking.
Well, have a research into it.
Yeah.
Let me know if you come up with some information about it. Definitely interested to know.
Do a little presentation.
Yeah. So, there we have had it. This was the review lecture already. So this is all the content that we have gone through. This afternoon I will be available for all questions and extra help if anybody needs any help or guidance through the process. And if there are more questions, please let me know. So, good luck everybody. Yes.
Jij bent misschien het iemand van Jeremy kunnen geven, want ik wil ook weten persoonlijk uit dat ik me wel